I think from my perspective, and we really see a variety of opportunities. So in terms of career tracks, I mean, you're speaking of, like for example, we'll see the IT project management career track, or the developer career track, or the networking career track. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, it's definitely specific, and I think that it can be difficult to transition from one to another. But some people do, and they do it seamlessly. But a lot of times if you start in one track, you tend to stay. At least that's what I see. An individual will tend to stay on that career track because that becomes their specialty.
I'll just add a comment. Because I tend to have a small company and support small customers, I tend to have kind of a myopic view. In my area, there's kind of the hardware, software, and networking support. And sometimes they meld together where hardware and networking have to be looked at together. But in my mind, those are kind of the career tracks that I see it.
Just to add to what was just said, I think it also depends a lot on the organization, the size of the organization, and how they're broken up. I've worked for small companies, medium-sized companies with a few hundred employees, and internal IT departments tend to have a lot of generalists, people who they know from the PC to the server. They might be able to do some application support, maybe a little web development, things like that. The larger organizations like where I am now, we have specialists. It's very specialized. Oracle database folks, Oracle developers, web developers. My team is the infrastructure group, so I've got networking experts, server experts, service desk, PC support, desktop people. So it really depends the size of the organization, but I think I see more and more the technology becoming highly specialized. So I think it's evolving into where you really have to be a specialist in certain areas. I think it's getting more difficult to be a generalist, but it all depends on the size of the organization.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about how to answer this question because I have a completely different perspective than any one of these guys here. So I think what I might just do is talk a little bit about what I typically see in higher education in terms of the types of degrees or the specialties in the degrees that people pursue. So when I take a look at the different sorts of programs we have at RIT, I could probably divide them into two kind of major categories. There's what I might refer to as developers. So those are people who are going to be actively doing coding of some sort. That coding might be coding some, writing some code that's going to run on a back-end server, something that's going to run on a mobile platform, maybe some web development, that sort of stuff. The other category that I see are people who, I guess what I would put in the traditional category of IT, where they're primarily responsible for maintaining machines, making sure things work, keeping networks running, making sure things are secure, patches are installed, those sorts of things. So, I guess from my perspective, if I were going to break it down, I think that's the way that I would kind of look at it. There's the people who do the development coding of some sort, and that coding can take a huge spectrum. And then the folks who basically, keep the hardware running and keep it secure and things along those lines.
I think probably the most critical personality trait that somebody has is really the desire to delve under and be a diagnostician. You got to be able to diagnose the problem and work towards what the solution is. And I think that's whether you're coding software or fixing a server or diagnosing a network problem or figuring out how someone's hacking into a server. You've really got to be willing to dig. I see a lot of people that claim to be technicians out there that want an easy answer, and I don't think there is always an easy answer. So I guess if I had to say what quality did you need, you've got to be willing to research and dig and spend time on something to really narrow down what the root cause of the problem is.
You can answer.
Yeah.
And I would say one of the personal qualities that's definitely needed in IT today is continuous learning. And because even over the past 10 years, what I knew coming out of college, the systems I worked on, everything, quite honestly, some of it's not applicable at all today. I mean, some of the concepts and theories and things are still there, and it hasn't changed all that much, but technology is rapidly expanding. You can look at mobile technologies. These things didn't even exist 10 years ago, and it's a whole new platform. It's a whole new industry. So a lot of what's happening, like for an internal IT department, these new technologies are coming out faster and faster, and there really isn't a roadmap. There's not. We're sort of developing a lot of it on the fly. There's new companies coming out with new software, new solutions, things like that. Where if you got a degree, if you went to RIT, let's say, and you got a degree 10 years ago, a lot of what you learned there might not even be applicable today. So I think being able to continuously learn and have that sort of passion to learn and to explore new things is really critical today.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what was just said. The things that I wanted to add, the first thing is I think regardless of what career, where you go in the IT area, you have to be a problem solver. You have to, in a way, you kind of got to like puzzles, is sort of the way that I look at it, because you're presented with these problems and you've got to figure out how to, come up with a solution for them. The other thing that, this is a very different audience than what I'm used to talking to. I mean, typically I'm talking to, like 18-year-olds. And what I'm going to say is usually, it scares them a little bit. But I think another thing that's very important in the IT field is you really need to be a team player. You need to be able to communicate. Those basic people skills are extremely important. That kind of stereotypical view of the geek that, they come into the office and they hide in the corner and they pound out code all day. That doesn't really fly in IT anymore. You really need to be a team player. There's virtually no software, no systems that are put out there that are done by individuals anymore. They're by teams. And you also need to be able to communicate and talk to the customers and understand what their needs are. So, I also think those people skills and those strong people skills are also extremely important regardless of, which track or career they end up going into.
And I'll agree with how those are probably the two biggest things that I see or hear from employers is one, let's just take the developer for an example. I want a developer that can actually talk to people, who can gather information, who can work in a team. That's all really important. And then secondly, I hear a lot of times, I want that developer that loves technology. So they don't just do it because they're good at it. They do it because they like it and they enjoy it. So someone who explores new technologies all the time and knows, what's the newest, latest, and greatest. Because an employer wants to know that this person can bring maybe new ideas to the company, that sort of thing. At TechnoSource, we get a variety of opportunities. I'll tell you, both last year and this year, what I've seen so far is an abundance of developer positions, especially in C#.NET technologies. We get in several every week, and they're not just contract. A lot of them are direct hire as well. So from our perspective, yes, we still have a variety, a little bit of project management, a little bit of sysadmin, networking, that sort of thing, but developers takes the cake by far.
And again, with my sort of myopic view, certainly the technical fields and sysadmin are probably where I'm seeing requirements. So yeah, I'll pass on.
I would agree. Not that we do a ton of hiring, but over the past year, the positions that we have either been application developers, database administrators, those types of positions. I'm on the infrastructure side, servers, networks, things like that. That's definitely, with a lot of the technology that's come out, they made it a lot easier to manage a lot more systems with less people, a lot more automation. So, and there's a lot of consolidation that happens with just the way the technology has expanded. So I think the sort of that hardcore sort of infrastructure, hardware, administration, I think those jobs aren't going to be as prevalent. It's really, in my mind, I think applications is everything. You see a lot of postings for mobile application developers. You know, everything. It's all about applications. It seems so.
I don't know if I'm a good person to answer this question. I mean, I'm in the computer science department, and basically we just crank out developers. So, I mean, that's what I'm seeing. We have more of probably a national draw, but, we've got, who was just there? Citrix was just there. The NSA is coming. All those sorts of folks, and, what they're looking for from us are developers. But then again, remember, I'm very much in a particular area, so that's not really representative of at least, what I think, people are looking for. So, these guys are probably better off answering the question.
Just one thing that comes top of mind is that mobile application development. I think because it's still pretty new, there might not be a lot of programs in school yet to take. So a lot of what I'm seeing, if people do have this sort of development, it's been self-taught, that sort of thing. So that's something that's popped up more recently, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. It's just, I think it's still new.
I guess the only thing I would add to that is kind of as businesses migrate to more cloud environment, private clouds, public clouds, some experience in what that implementation requires and how it all kind of interfaces. So.
I would say, sort of to build on what we mentioned before, is that customer service aspect. Find a lot of really skilled technicians, maybe 10 plus years experience, are really good sound technicians, but they maybe don't have the customer service sort of people skills. And like you said before, that really doesn't work much anymore. My customers are my internal employees. We have 1,800 employees. They come with problems, challenges. We have to go sit in meetings and talk to them and understand their problems and understand what they're trying to do and understand the business needs and all that. And it really takes a special person to take what the business is looking for and come up with a technology solution and being able to communicate that back and forth. Sometimes it's difficult for someone who has just been in a very, very technical role for a long time. So.
And this is kind of a tough one for me to answer, I think. And I've got an answer, but it may touch upon some of the questions that are going to be asked later on. So I suspect probably what I represent to you guys is I'm preparing your competition. Right? I'm turning out the 21 to 22-year-olds who are on the job market that you're probably competing with. So as I was thinking about an answer to this question, I was trying to think about, how might you position yourselves to maybe compete with some of these kids? And to be perfectly honest with you, I think it's hard to compete with them, head to head in a way. The ability of some of these kids to code is just incredible. They turn me on a dime. I mean, it's kind of scary, but I think some of the things that you might not see out there where you could compete, and it was touched upon by a previous answer, is, when I look at what we're doing at school, we've only got them for 4 years, and there's only so much that we can do. So really what we try to do is focus on the general stuff. We try to get the lifelong learning into them, which is extremely important, as you all know. And as a result, I think some of the newer niche stuff, like the mobile, the cloud stuff, they may touch on a course or two where they see that, but they probably don't have a lot of depth in that. And I think what you bring to the table, which could be different than a 21, 22, 23-year-old student, or however you want to phrase them, is if you've got more experience, you probably have a better, you're able to see the big picture a little bit better. So maybe one of the things that you could do, or maybe a skill that you could look at, is maybe trying to develop skills or expertise in one of these kind of hot areas, like mobile computing or like cloud, or maybe some specific stuff in security. Web is changing all the time. And I'm kind of thinking maybe if you went for some of those niche things, perhaps coupled with the experience that you already bring to the table, it might put you in a good position to, be a viable candidate for a job.
We tend to retain our employees for a long time, so I don't have to go looking for new candidates very often. And kind of because of that, I don't look for a whole list of certifications and things along those lines, because we'll bring them in, train them as kind of a starting technician, and train them up to do the server and sysadmin support once they've mastered some of the basic PC and networking support. So I don't tend to have a list of very specific qualifications that I look for. And again, it's more important to me, and to add to what was said before, is that person's going to meld well with the rest of the team. They're a good team player. They work well together. And they've also got problem solving and interest in technology. So.
I would say this is a difficult one to answer. Being someone who has put out some postings, over the past year for certain positions, wish list, I guess you could say, a job posting I put out that have 15 bullet points, sort of what the responsibilities are, and then then broken out maybe in another section of the requirements. Certifications sometimes are a must-have. I think of I have some network engineers, so Cisco certifications are almost a must-have. Now, are they current certifications, or are they certifications they got years ago, but they've been working in the industry and just haven't stayed up? You see that a lot. It all depends, on the mix. I always, in pretty much any posting I'll put out, I'd like to see a bachelor's degree. Is it a requirement for each position? Not always, if they've got 15 years experience and a handful of certifications. What the degree is in, just having a bachelor's degree in history to be a network engineer, how applicable is that? But all these things, I think, for me, it's when I see a resume, it's, do they sort of meet the basics of what I'm looking for? And then it's all about the interview process. It's the person. The resume, to be honest, maybe I don't know if I'm like everyone else. I mean, I sort of peruse them, breeze over them, see if they've got, the key things, the key experience that I'm looking for, and then bring them in for an interview. And that's really what matters to me.
And again, I'm going to give you a totally different sort of an answer. The thing that comes to my mind when I'm looking at this, and I'm not exactly sure how to say this, but make sure that if you put on a resume that you have a skill in a particular area, particularly if it's programming or some kind of technology, that you really know that technology. Because a common trend that seems to be happening in interviews these days is people will be asked, if you're applying for a coding position, you'll be asked to write some code during the interview, and I've also known the same sort of thing happen if you're, going in for a web development position. They might ask you to throw down some HTML and things along those lines. So, make sure that, it kind of goes without saying, but I guess what I'm trying to say is just make sure you're honest about, if you're listing a particular skill on a resume and if that employer is looking for that particular skill, make sure that you know it because you might be called to task on it during the interview.
So in terms of job postings, I guess my perspective is a little bit different, but I wanted to hear what employers had to say first before I said anything. What we typically do is we'll meet with an employer and talk about, okay, that's great. You have this whole list of things that you're looking for, but what do you really want? So, and sometimes it's, maybe 5 things off of that job description, but really I'm looking for this, this, and this because here's my problems and here's how this person could fix it. Okay, that's great to know. So, and the hard part for a job seeker is that you won't always have those hot buttons to work with. You just have the job description. So I would say if you have, 80% of what the job description is looking for, or even 70%, I would customize your resume so it's very obvious to an employer why are you a fit, right? Because you said you're perusing the resume. I do the same thing. I need to know why are you a fit right away because you're competing against a lot of people in the marketplace. So why are you a fit right off the bat, and really customize the resume, I think is the biggest thing here, but I would apply. It really depends on the company from my perspective. Some companies say a bachelor's degree in anything, as long as they have a bachelor's degree, that's fine. Some companies, it's very specific. I would say if you have a bachelor's degree in computer science or a related field, some experience, a good personality, and certifications, it's a home run. I think that if you don't have a degree, getting some certifications will absolutely help you. It shows that you're, trying to stay top of the market, on top of things. You're going out of your way to pursue. Those are all good things to have on the resume if you don't have a degree. You don't have to have a degree for every company. It just depends.
And I guess I would agree with Susan, and again, with a very focused view, I don't think bachelor's or advanced degrees are critical in people that we look for. On the other hand, at least having some basic certifications would help, whether that's in the security or networking or Microsoft tracks, or just a plus and network and security plus. That's what we would look for. On the other hand, the last person we hired didn't have those, but had a real interest and he's quickly going through those certifications while he's working for us. So.
I think certifications, definitely for me on the infrastructure side of technology, certifications are really nice to have. Are they a must-have when hiring a position? No, but they sure go a long way. Ones that come to mind when they're listed here, like A+, Network Plus, those are nice ones to have for service desk, help desk type positions. You want to get into networking, network security. Any of the Cisco certifications are really good. Microsoft servers, server technology, any of the Microsoft certifications are good to have. I find a lot of the resumes I get, a lot of people don't have them, quite honestly, or they're out of date. The Cisco ones, I think, are, if you're not working in a position that you're working as a network technician or something in that role, getting those Cisco certifications is really difficult. Microsoft, those are good as well. It's hard to say, but they definitely go a long way. Especially if you're trying to, I think if you're trying to get into IT and you don't have a lot of experience, the certifications will help. I would say though, there are a lot of certifications without a lot of experience don't go a long way for certain types of positions. So if you have 2 years experience and you got a CCNA, Cisco certification because you went to a 1-week boot camp, I'm gonna breeze right over that. That's not the in-depth experience that we'd be looking for. They're good, but they're just, like I said before, the interview, the working background, personality, those go a long way. I think the certifications they really help you get the interview, but from there, the certifications sort of just go away. But it depends. I mean, if the role is very, very specific, then certification is necessary. But I think you'll find, at least in private companies, at least in the bigger the company, the more specialized I think the positions you'll find. There's very few of those, I think, in Rochester, in this market. This tends to be I've seen it's a medium, small business side, so having a good, well-rounded background with some certifications is probably a good thing. Sorry, ramble on that a little bit.
Okay, so can anyone in this room guess how I'm going to answer the question? How important is it to have a college degree? Bill Dessler ever heard me say no and saw this podcast, I'd be in serious trouble. All kidding aside, really the people you should be listening to for these questions are these guys, because they're the ones who are hiring you. And to be honest with you, depending on where you are in your life and your stage in your career, if you don't have a degree, I'm not 100% sure if it makes sense for you to go and actually get one. It kind of depends on your motivation and the rest of it. Again, as I thought about how to answer this question, I just thought, and again, it touches on maybe a question down the road, but one of the things that's kind of a trend in higher education right now, people are starting to do more what they're calling open courseware. Okay. Some of the bigger schools like Stanford, MIT, I think Harvard, I'm trying to remember all the ones that are out there, but they're actually putting the courses online. So you can take the courses online, the actual courses that are taught at MIT, Stanford, and the rest of it, so that, again, if there's a specific area that you're interested in or you're trying to get some expertise in, that might be a way to get that without perhaps investing the time and energy that you might into an entire degree. Another thing that you might want to look at that, again, many higher education institutions offer are certificates. For example, I believe at RIT we have a certificate in security. And typically what those certificates are is it's a smaller collection of courses that you take that'll give you some expertise in a particular area. Won't take you 4 years of your life to do, and it won't take hundreds of thousands of dollars to get. And you do get some sort of a certificate at the end that gives you something that you could put on a resume. So I mean, those are some things that you might want to look at.